The holiday season overlaps the campaign season. Iowa holds its Republican caucuses 1 week from tomorrow. The latest poll shows a three-way race right now. Ron Paul favored by 21% of voters, Mitt Romney 20%, and Newt Gingrich right behind at 19%. Dean Reynolds is in Des Moines tonight following Ron Paul's suddenly surging campaign. Dean?
Good evening, Jeff. Well, today's Des Moines Register asks a very valid question. Could Ron Paul win?
Oh, the question is in that state whether a revolution could be in the making, and that fellow on the left you see is the guy who could be bringing it. Ron Paul, the front runner right now in the Iowa caucuses.
Ron Paul supporters are not just devoted, they are growing. His message has largely been vindicated in the last 4 years since he first ran, and his support isn't going anywhere. So no one should count Ron Paul out of this. Could end up being a big surprise.
That's right. Ron Paul is now in the #1 spot in Iowa with 23% of likely Republican caucus voters behind him in the latest poll. I know that we talk about this all the time, how the media barely gives this man any coverage, but here it just becomes so much more blatantly obvious. He's #1 in the poll, and they either really just quickly kind of glaze over that and then move on to the other candidates and what this means for their campaigns, or they just don't even mention Paul and instead only talk about Newt Gingrich and Mitt Romney. I mean, it's just absurd, especially if you think about the way the mainstream media had a collective heart attack and obsessed over every single other candidate that at one point they've called the flavor of the month.
Are you surprised Ron Paul is polling so well?
I think it's horrible.
No, Ron Paul is not going to get the Republican nomination.
Ron Paul is not going to win the nomination, ought not to win the nomination, and is not going to be president of the United States.
Can candidate Ron Paul overcome his newsletter problems?
There are some pretty racy and racist things if you read some of these letters.
In one, the author suggests that 95% of black men in Washington, D.C. are criminals.
Boy, it sure burns me to have a national holiday for that pro-communist philanderer, Martin Luther King.
These stooges don't scare me. Threats or no threats. I've laid bare the coming race war in our big cities, the federal homosexual cover-up on AIDS.
You know, saying that in 1993 the Israelis were responsible for the bombing of the World Trade Center, that kind of stuff. So,
Goodbye.
All right. Thank you, Congressman.
This is the skeleton in Ron Paul's closet.
Ron Paul doesn't just have problems with Israeli foreign policy or the right-wing government in place over there now. He, according to the former staffer, doesn't believe in the state of Israel, believes the Arabs should get that land.
But when he says go back to the gold standard, it's like saying you're an alcoholic, let's pass prohibition.
In 1996, Ron Paul defended the black men are fast and criminal writings in his newsletters. Today he says not only did he not write that stuff, he didn't even read it. That was at least what he told CNN before, in the middle of the interview, he took off his microphone and stormed away.
Ron Paul is the most liberal candidate in the field. Former advisor to President Bill Clinton and the author of the book Dubs Goes to Washington is here with us. Dick Morris. Hi, Dick.
See, I want Dubs, my dog, to go to Washington, not Ron Paul.
Neither Ron Paul nor Rick Santorum really truly want to be president. I've talked to both of these guys.
Wildly racist and conspiratorial.
Hateful. Dangerous.
Tainted
Extremist thinks homosexuals should be executed.
Let's talk about Ron Paul, though. So here he is at the top of the polls, only a few days to go. And so some people obviously love him. And so how can he have so many powerful negatives amongst Iowa voters? And what are they that make him so unacceptable in their view?
Well, you know, it's interesting. Last night even I was out at a Romney event, and a lot of the people there were about 400 people or so, but a lot of them were undecided. I talked to some of them to see what they thought, and some of the people, most of the people who said the reason that they're actually looking at Romney now, even though they might like other candidates and they had been with Herman Cain, they said, look, we don't want Iowa to go down in history as having voted for Ron Paul. They see that as a big problem. Now, these are folks in the more central, eastern part of the state who aren't your evangelicals from the western part of the state, but that's a big reason for why you're seeing, Mitt Romney's strength here, and whether or not Ron Paul can withstand this in the next few days is going to be really telling to see if he can pull out the caucus.
We got new polls. Of course we do. Every day we got new polls on Iowa, and every day it's a new batch of fun. So yesterday, the new polls had come in from CNN and Time that showed all of a sudden Mitt Romney ahead by 25 to 22% over Ron Paul.
All voters, look at this, Ron Paul, 24%, Mitt Romney, 23%, very close behind Rick Santorum, 19%, Newt Gingrich, 13%. This is the entrance poll.
Now, you have done 2 tours in Afghanistan. You told me you're going to go back for a 3rd tour. I mean, if you can see your neck right there, what you have on your tattoo, 9/11, remember, and a picture of the Twin Towers. You know, some Republicans out there have been saying that Ron Paul would be very dangerous for this country because he wants to bring troops like you back from your post from all over the world.
Well, I think it would be even more dangerous to start nitpicking wars with other countries. Someone like Iran, Israel is more than capable of.
All right, we just lost our connection, unfortunately, with Dana. Dana, stand by if you can hear me. We're going to get back. You want to go to Candy Crowley over at Mitt Romney headquarters.
Way to kick the 2012 election into high gear. The first contest, could you imagine it be this close? Any tighter, more surprising. The cover of the Des Moines Register says it all.
This election is bigger, even than jobs and a strong economy. It's really an election about the soul of America.
In 3rd place, buoyed by a surge of independent voters, Ron Paul.
Let's go back to this real old-fashioned idea, this very dangerous idea. Let's obey the Constitution.